Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a team and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that will affect the ratepayers, all our citizens, staff and stakeholders of our district. And continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater benefit of our people in the Taurua. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Any apologies, councillors? Looks like we have everybody here, which is great. Public forum, no notifications. Ellie, move on. Oops, just excuse me. Do something that's important to me, like all my minutes and things. Notification of item not on the agenda. I did just overlook popping in the promised notes on the infrastructure symposium. So if your council got no objection, we'll pop that in the end. And me, Tracy, Stephen, I'll just give you a bit of an update on that. If everyone's happy, that'd be great. Thank you very much for that. Any declarations of conflicts of interest? No there. Right, we have the minutes from our last meeting. We'd like to move in a second that they be received. Councillor Sharon, Councillor Steve, all in favour? Okay, so we'll flick through those councillors. This should wait here. I'm just having this is a page, right? So we are up to 7.1. Just you got the start. Oh, just apologies, council. I get myself sorted without any minutes, any hard copy anyway. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. Nothing there we probably won't deal with later, councillors. Thank you. Move on to okay. I'll just borrow Hamish's. So if we get on to, oh no, you'll have those, Hamish. Yep, on to Hamish's report, item 7.1. Hamish, all yours.
Chair Kerry, good afternoon. Yeah, Tracy and councillors, nice to see you again. So we'll go through the report section by section. I'd just like to pass on Roger's apologies, though. He's unfortunately sick today, so I'll take a stab at answering any questions on his behalf. Well, can give a very quick update to what happened on end of last week in Dannevirke with the water as well. So, but we might start with the roading if that's okay. So we'll invite Dan up to come talk for that bit.
Dan. Afternoon, everyone. So I'll take the report as read, but just a few key areas that I'll touch on. So it has come to not just the end of the financial year, being end of June, but also the end of the 3-year funding block, the National Land Transport Program. So we're moving into the new National Land Transport Program now. So the focus with us being the off-season of the roading is to make sure that our full works program and basically our strategy aligns with the long-term plan in the NLTP. So yeah, a lot of focus at the moment has been put on building that 3-year full works program for all of our renewal works, and also building the program for the essentially the recovery works, which we'll touch on a bit later. So you can see with the new government policy statement, the government have changed their focus around the health and safety with the road safety initiatives and looking at the pothole prevention budget, which you can see on the table in the report 4.2. Sorry, it's just printed off a bit range on my one, but it just shows it's the same budget work categories that we've had previous, but they've just basically aligned the work categories that to the pothole prevention under that bucket. So as you can see, with the indicative funding that we've got or had put through to us from NZTA, that the operations work categories have reduced, which I'm sure everyone's aware. But in regards to the pothole prevention, as you can see, it's reasonably close, with the LTP indicative budgets being 44.7 million and the indicative approved budgets from NZTA is 44.4 million, which is good news for us because that is what this district needs as far as the improvements that we need to make to the district is in those areas, in those work categories. So we're pleased to see that come through. We still haven't had anything come back from NZTA regarding the footpath maintenance or renewal budgets or the cycling, the low cost, low risk program. So you're still waiting to get that. Yeah, in regards to kind of end of the financial year and into NRTP, as I mentioned, the focus has been making sure that the program and budgets are completed and the budgets are utilised to the end of the year, which you can see in the table in 4.3. We're pretty happy with the outcome that we had from that. So we've been pretty close to utilising those budgets. There hasn't been overspends and there hasn't been unnecessary spends either. So we're really pleased with that, especially when we look back on the last 3 years. The last 2 seasons have been quite affected by emergency work. So we actually had quite a big renewals program to get through this year to making sure that we've utilised it and we've achieved that. So really happy about that. That's really all I've got as far as to touch on. Are there any questions?
Thanks. Councillor Mike.
Through you, Chair. Just the 4.3.4, the Wilding Pines, whereabouts are you spraying for these, please?
I'm sorry, I don't have exact roads. It's just spread across the district, but I don't have the exact roads as far as where they're being dealt to with the noxious weed spraying, unfortunately.
Any other questions, councillors, for the transport part of the report? I think, and just from my perspective, I think the team's done a fantastic job actually reaching the end of the year. We were reaching where you are at the end of the year, given the emergency works and the challenge we had with the weather at times. Certainly the comment that's come back through to myself just in my workplace and just to say that and the comments coming back have been really great through the quality work, but I think the councillors here would be pretty pleased we've arrived actually at the end of this financial year. So Councillor Sharon.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. I was going to save it for the road and recovery one, but and I appreciate that councillors will be doing a bit of a network overdrive, but I went out to Akatio in the weekend and I cannot believe the transformation. That road is completely changed. And I can't believe the amount, I'd hate to think how much dirt's been shifted off some of those hillsides, but the tidy up of the trees that we've always worried about, it was such a breeze to drive out there. And please pass on my congratulations. It's probably been the only winter I haven't had complaints coming from any of the locals about the issues out there. So they've done a fantastic job. Long may it. I'm sure it, well, as I was explaining to my daughter, she said, how could they do this, Mum? I said, what we've been able to do with this money is build back better, not just patch it up the way that we've always done. But there are parts of that road that I didn't even recognise. So well done. Huge congratulations.
Thank you, Chair Kerry. I'd like to add to that, and I'm sure Councillor Johns and Councillor Scott will endorse this as well, as the amazing job that you've done at Kawanui with the repair work there. We were absolutely gobsmacked when we saw it, and the locals out there, it was a hot topic of discussion. So one point, Andrew will be happy. But no, seriously though, absolutely outstanding. So thank you.
Thank you, councillors. That's to move on. That's the transport section. Thanks very much, Dan. Thank you. Great. On to three waters. So we three waters, Hamish.
Kerry, so in Roger's absence, I'll quickly skim over some of the key points. So we're certainly working through the consenting compliance side of things with Horizon still. There are a few challenges there, but we one positive is that we have taken over our own sampling, which has cut a bit of cost away from the operational side of things, and means we can be a little bit more responsive and take a bit of ownership of that space. Horizons has been doing it on our behalf for free for quite some time, so that's great news. We have guys out, our own people out there looking and getting those samples. That's really positive. Out in Pongaroa, we've managed to fix the filter out there, so that's good news as well. It will hopefully provide a bit of resilience when the intake gets turbid. It will hopefully mean less boil water notices for Pongaroa township there. And the Ikitahuna Reservoir repairs are underway as well. So that was a bit of a risk that was identified in one of the inspections done 4 or 5 months ago, I suppose now. It's good to get done. So that's all happening. In terms of what happened last week in Dannevirke, the issue stemmed from these water treatment plants all have sensors, and the sensors get monitored by computers. Unfortunately, the computers that were supposed to tell us when things are going wrong, both of them decided to die at once. So they're both sitting in Paeatua in the plant down there, and everything sort of feeds into it. When they died, it meant suddenly our eyes were shut. We couldn't see what was going on. So unbeknownst to us, Dannevirke was not producing water anymore. The river was too turbid, so the plant went into a bit of a cleaning cycle, and it couldn't get itself out. In normal times, it would tell us that it was in this weird cycle, and someone would pop up there and change the settings, and off it would go. Unfortunately, we didn't get told that because, of course, the computers that would tell us that weren't doing it. So by the time we got up there and realised what was happening, the clock was ticking on how much treated water we had left for Dannevirke. As soon as that happened, we were able to make the very small changes to the settings, and off it went. So yeah, we did get fairly close to having a bit of a problem there, but it was crisis averted. And since then, the systems are now alarming us, telling us when there's things wrong happening, and the computers are booked in to be replaced. So it's all go for now.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Hamish. As you were reading it out, it seemed eerily familiar to the situation. I know it's a really difficult one because, you know, we rely on the technology to tell us, and we have no way of knowing fails. But is the team going to be looking at any other fail safes for if we, you know, we've had quite a few examples of technology failures letting the team down?
Yes, absolutely. So the SCADA project that's underway at the moment, so that's the system that does all that reporting for us and monitors all those things. So there's upgrades in place that are sort of ongoing. It's going to be a bit of a staged rollout because it's quite a big piece of work over a couple of years, but certainly that redundancy is going to be pretty crucial to start off with. And, you know, we're looking at bringing some of those technological services in-house a bit more. So, you know, within our own server rooms, so that we have a bit more control and visibility on what's happening.
For you, Chair, my question was roughly that as well. But at the end of the day, when we're talking technology, there is no 100% guarantee. We're going to have technology hiccups from time to time, aren't we? Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. And in a perfect world, we'd have enough operators to get around all those plants and keep a really close eye on them. Unfortunately, at the moment, we have 2 water operators for our entire district. So they're very busy men and very thinly spread. So we do have to rely on the technology quite a bit as well, perhaps a little bit more than we'd like to.
Councillor Keza, any question?
Kerry. Yeah, thanks, Hamish. Under the consents in the plans 5.1.1, this wastewater sampling that Horizons was doing and is now handing it back to us, do I take it from this that they just audit the sampling that we do, or do they do a separate sampling?
Through you, Chair Kerry. So we take samples ourselves, send it off to the lab, and the results get reported back to Horizons. In the past, they had been doing that other part themselves as well. And there was quite a lag from when they took the samples to when we got the information to when we could then feed it back to them. So by taking them out of that loop, it gives us the, I guess, empowerment to get on with it and get it the results, much quicker.
Excellent. And the other one is 5.1.3 regarding Norsewood. Some time ago, we discussed what the future for Norsewood Water was, whether we provide them all with tanks and don't supply water, or we do whatever, or supply it from Dannyburg was one of the options. Are we just kicking the can down the road here and just sort of pretty much doing what we've always done and fixing things on the fly, as it were? Or are we going to have that discussion about the future of Norsewood Water?
So the piece of work that Rationale are doing on our behalf is looking at the entire district, a bit broader in terms of where our efforts should be, and provide some of those sorts of options. And those discussions will be able to be had as part of that output. So it's certainly on the radar to consider.
I was just wondering if I can pick up on the turbidity of the river. I know I was a little bit surprised at the time because the weather conditions sort of didn't signal to me, that high turbidity that we couldn't manage. Is there anything being looked into as to the cause, or is that just general rainfall, or?
Through you, Chair Kerry. So Roger and the team have told me that the river is taking long to recover following rain events, and it may be something upstream that's causing it. I know it's on their list of things to investigate further. As you can imagine, they're fairly busy, so it's on the list.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Item 5.1.3, Hamish, around the addressing the non-compliance and a new consent being applied for. Has that been budgeted in our next annual? Because that wasn't on the radar when we did our LTP thinking, was it?
Through you, Chair Kerry, I'd have to check that, unfortunately. I don't know the details of that one.
Common price.
Hamish, can I just duck back to Dannyburg for a second? Just to get my head around it. So the river got turbid and we clicked into the impounded supply, and then the computer stopped taking water out of there, unbeknown to us. This is the sequence. And so all of it, so we got right down to pretty low levels in number 2 reservoir before we realised there was no water going into that. Was that the sequence of that?
So from my understanding, the river was reasonably turbid, and the way the water comes into the plant, it gets mixed. So at that point, it was being mixed between the impounded supply of the dam and the river. So they're both going in there. The plant on its own decided that was too turbid, and so it was trying to clean itself, and then it would have another look, and it still was too turbid, so it would start to clean itself, and it got stuck in this loop. So it got stuck in that loop from 7 o'clock in the morning to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon was when we realised. So all of that time, there was no water being delivered to the reservoir 2, we call it, which is the treated tank. So calculations were that there was about 40% of that tank left at that point.
In reality, we didn't have a lot of water left, really, did we? For Dannyburg, actually. Yeah. So okay, so it just sort of just underlies to me there's quite a high risk for Dannyburg if things go wrong, isn't there? Really, with only what have we got, 18 hours or 24 hours supply? Sorry. That's thanks. Here, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. I just want to comment on 5.1.4. Just working alongside Roger, I've written to the Chief Executive of Horizons Regional Council, just requesting a little bit more time. I was a bit nervous around the responding by the 9th of August and having to have a plan. Talked about the Three Waters Advisory Group and the work that we're doing with Rationale, and asking for the opportunity to be able to look at this as a whole and make sure that we've got the right solution, the right decision, and the time to do that. I just was very nervous to end up with a high cost consent in that process. So that letter's gone off today.
Yes, interesting. Councillor White.
Rationale, when is the date for their submission? Please.
Through you, Chair Kerry. So we're looking middle of August to bring paper to council.
Sorry, this is in respect of the Dannyburg Canal Park. Is that the?
I mean the whole district. I know Dannyburg is district.
Through you, Chair Kerry. I think I'd have to double check on that, but it's certainly due before the end of this calendar year.
Like, we've got the impounded supply, which is on our agenda to do now, but the Hamish is setting up this advisory panel to then look at the significantly urgent matters, and then the whole thing, isn't it? That's the plan, with a report to come back before we need to report back on the water services bill, don't we? We need to get a decision to that, and then come up with a long-term plan to bring to council, isn't that right? Yeah. Which hopefully, Mike, I think is, well, we have to get the report, we have to get the plan for the, for the water services, our responsibilities there, but then on the whole, we need to, the advisory group needs a plan that we bring back to the councillors to look over. That's in addition to the impounded supply. Yeah, that's right. Okay. That's, I think, the sequence, isn't it, Tracy? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Right. So if we move on, debt management. Those were those mergers. Anything there? Staffing 5.4. Yes. Most important area is starting with, aren't we? Solid waste, item 6.
Can I just go?
We'll go with Councillor Steve, Councillor Pat.
Sorry, I just want to back the bus up through you, Chair Trace. It's a long day. I've got the grandkids. So. Through you, Chair Kerry, to Hamish. All the time I've been involved with water treatment, I find that doesn't stack up where we're going and where we've been. So I know we're being proactive rather than react. Well, yeah, because where I'm coming from, where I was working from, they see it 24 hours, and I mean for it to fail like that, there seems to be something's missing. Something is definitely missing in this equation. It just doesn't add up to me. So maybe we could have a private chat or something. Yeah, just doesn't add up. Thank you.
What you said there, Hamish, just asked a question. At Alliance headquarters, they are monitoring water minute by minute out there, aren't they? That's where I was working for 20 years. So that we are getting, so that we're not there on the weekends, of course, are we? But that the warning signs from, I mean, it's quite impressive when you go there and sit there seeing what it's showing, the intake and outflows 5 minute by 5 minutes, isn't it? We were looking at those the other day, Tracy, and I just perhaps just follow up, Steve.
Through Chair, so the information you're talking about is from SCADA, so that's the raw data feed. The computers that monitor the raw data and make a decision to alert us with the bits that went down. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Right, back to solid waste, councillors. Oh, sorry, Peter, my apologies.
Through you, Kerry. Just, yeah, what are we on, 5.2.2, Ekatahuna, the buckled panels on the number 2 reservoir, which holds 4,500 litres, doesn't seem like a lot of water in a reservoir. It's not 450,000 litres, is it?
I think that might be a typo.
And the buckled panels, are they structural or is it just a look good?
They're not just there for aesthetic reasons, but yeah, they're structural components. We had an assessment done on it, and yeah, that was their recommendation. Correct. Yes.
I think would have been an issue.
It was the recommendation of the engineer that did the inspection that this was critical work to get done as soon as possible. So we're not one to argue with engineers when they make recommendations like that.
Not as money, I suppose.
He's not getting paid to fix it. He only made the recommendations to us. So.
Right, yes, we'll carry on. Solid waste, item 6. Oh, sorry, Tracy.
6.3, just having a look at the tonnes collected, we seem to be going down. Is that a winter thing? Is that any reason for that? I guess, if we dropped into sort of single figures for curbside glass.
Yeah. Winter goes by. Trying to lie. Contributing to that. July's been the lowest tonnage. Yeah, that's actually a new record low.
This should be proud. Yeah. Affordability.
Did not take that into account.
Yes, so councillors, last page is the roadmap that's been presented to. This has been presented to the initial advisory group. That's where which Tracy and I and Hamish had a look at last week. So perhaps you might just like to perhaps talk a little bit about that, Hamish, and councillors can ask any questions respect of this map here.
One comment, if I may. You see, it's called the District Three Waters Roadmap. We're still using the Three Waters name, are we? We're not talking about local water done well or anything. Roadmap, but same thing.
Through you, Chair Kerry. No, we're still using Three Waters as in the activity that provides those three activities. An internal name rather than outward facing or reflective of anything else, I suppose. Yeah. So this work Roger and his team have done is to pull together where we are, what we need to fix, and where we're heading in the future. And while I don't know the details of it, I know that there is an awful lot of detail behind each one of these lines and a lot of effort required for each one of them. So that they are working really hard to get caught up in terms of the consenting and conditions that we're expecting to be meeting and the projects that are required to get into that space. They're trying to manage the present as well, like looking at what each of the assets needs, what we need to do to continue to be compliant, and working on the future as well. So how do we actually do the things that we need to now, but also take into account what's coming? So there's an awful lot of moving parts in that, as you can probably see. So yeah, happy to take any questions on it, or just take it as for your information as to where the team are heading.
Councillors about this, or whether Three Waters Advisory information is.
Just a comment, because I notice these things. Is it Pangaroa or Pongaroa? I didn't know if Pangaroa was an asset name or something like that, but Sorry.
Good spotting. Councillor Sharon, we'll pass on the spelling mistake to Roger.
Councillor Lowe.
Through you, Chair Kerry. The stormwater. One of the critical things is stormwater getting into our wastewater. Is that addressed in here somewhere?
You, Chair Kerry, certainly is. It's part of the I&I project that they're working on, so inflow and infiltration. So where the groundwater comes in is the inflow, and infiltration is, sorry, the other way around. Infiltration and the inflow is where it comes from people's rooftops. So, yeah.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just on managing the present critical projects, FMEA, just so that everybody knows.
Apologies.
I think it was last week we had a meeting with Hamish and Roger, and just to finalise this, and was in behind this was a very, very impressive detailed map of a map of where we're to go, and this is condensed into from that, isn't it? So there'll be quite a bit more come back to council sooner than later, hopefully, for this. Roger and his team have just got to get together with iwi and a few other stakeholders in this, and then that hopefully won't be too far away. So that's the three water. Anyway, so if we move, sorry, Councillor.
So I just referenced this in FMEA as failure mode and effects analysis. It dates back to the 1940s. It's that old.
Chat GPT.
No, Google.
Do they have questions on the page report, councillors? Right, we have a mover and a seconder to have that received. Councillor Peter, Mayor Tracy, all in favour? Aye. Thank you, Kerry. Thanks, councillors. So we'll be on to 7.2 emergency management. Peter. Welcome, Peter, this afternoon. Your hands, Peter.
Thank you, Kerry, and afternoon, councillors. I'd like to take the report as read, but there's one thing I'd like to highlight in there, and that's the uptake on the staff training. This time last year, intermediate course level, we're sitting at about 72%. Now it's 87, and then have 99% trained in foundation with the staff turnover we've had in the last 12 months or so. I think that's a great result, and to me, it comes down from being led from the top, ELT, right down to the tier 3 managers, down to the people doing the courses. So, which is a great achievement, considering a lot of the things that have come out of the reviews. One of the main things that came out of the reviews in Auckland and Hawke's Bay has been lack of training. So I think as far as training goes, we're in a pretty good place going forward. But it is a live beast as staff come and go, and it's a constant thing. But I think that's just something I'd like to highlight to you all. Is there any questions you got from the report?
Yes, Councillor Sharon.
Thank you, Chair Kerry, and thank you, Pete, because that was a good news story, the 3.1. The one person that's booked into the controllers course, I mean, I don't need to know the name, but at what level in the organisation are they?
Here, Cherry, they are tier 3. So they're middle management.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Tracy.
Thanks, Kerry. With the training, I know in previous years, and I know, the teams are all, flat out at the moment, but is there any planning or coordinated, training exercise planned locally in the sort of next 2 years?
Cherry, yes, there is. So Brian and I are meeting with Ross Brannigan after the KEG meeting in August. So I've asked Ross to facilitate a course, which will allow me to, well, not participate, but I'll be able to be there as a mentor and along with Brian. So we are planning on potentially in November, so that the staff that have been trained can kind of put it to some practical use. We haven't had a exercise for a while because we kept having events. So
Just for the role that we played in the regional, well, it was actually the national simulation, and so councillors know, I think in the debrief in the afternoon, it was actually only Peter and myself on that call. So we were one of the few councils that took that at the level that I felt it needed to be practiced. Well done, Peter.
Any other questions for councillors? I think you're very happy, Peter, with the events and management. So thanks for that. If I move into second for Peter's report. Move Steve, second Scott, all in favour? Thanks, carried. Thanks very much, Peter. We move on to, I think we're on to point 3. So adoption of draft waste management in your hands, Ellie. Thank you.
Chair Kerry. This is pretty much just a technical bit. The committee has already received the waste assessment and adopted the draft waste management and minimisation plan, but the piece of the equation that's missing is the statement of proposal outlining the consultation process. So once the committee has adopted that, the consultation will begin. We've got everything set, ready to go.
Thanks very much, Ellie. So the report was very clear and the process is it was easy to follow. Thank you, Ellie. Any questions? I think we've done the minimiser. Yeah, done. So move Peter. Second Mike. All in favour? No, that's right. Before we say yes or no, Sharon, you look.
No, just a query regarding, so once we've received the submissions, which committee will consider, where will those submissions be from?
We have put in the calendars an extraordinary council meeting on the 4th of September to do that. If there's any deliberations needed, then the infrastructure committee meeting can do that on the 18th and then council final adoption, because it has to be adopted by council and that's for the end of September meeting.
Thanks.
Sharon and Ellie, I think we got nearly there, but all in favour? Against, carried. Thank you very much, Ellie, for that. Moving through very quickly. So, all right. Okay, 7.4 councillors. We'll back to you again, Dan. Cyclone road and recovery. Thanks.
Chair Kerry. So just a couple of points I want to touch on regarding the cyclone recovery update is regarding the initial response funding. So as you can see there, 3.1. So we had the 100% FAR for the 44.97 million. As we've discussed at these previous meetings, the concern was is utilising that funding up until the end of the financial year, as we weren't sure whether that would extend at 100% FAR. However, it has been confirmed that 100% FAR has been extended until December. And so up until end of June, we'd basically come short by 3 million of that 44.97. So the good news is that we'll be able to utilise the remaining $3 million up until Christmas at that 100% FAR rate. So yeah, so basically that concern's not there anymore in regards to that reducing, which is good news. In regards to the recovery response, so we've had $18.7 million approved so far by NZTA. and that is at the FAR rate of 93%. So we're just currently working through, as mentioned earlier, in regards to having a full works program for utilising that 18.7 million, and we've got the additional up to $45 million sitting in TA. So we're waiting for the remainder of that to actually be approved. 20 million of that is for resilience. So we're not sure what that looks like, especially with the new investment policy being reviewed. And in regards to that, so you see in the report that it mentioned at the time of writing this report, we weren't sure what was happening with the review, but there was an online meeting on the 11th of July. So news from their meeting was that they haven't confirmed what the new FAR rate or what the new funding criteria is going to look like for emergency works going forward, which is the big questions for us. However, what they did mention in that meeting was they have clarified the descriptions of what initial response, what recovery and what resilience means, which we were actually for in regards to that change of policy, because it is good to understand, we'll get better understanding of what that means from NZTA's perspective. So in regards to getting the answers regarding the FAR rate and the funding criteria, NZTA unfortunately didn't indicate exactly when we're going to be able to get that news or those answers. However, they were talking around September, October-ish. So yeah, we'll obviously keep following up and seeing what comes back. But from what I understand, I believe all local authorities were opposed to that, which is obviously understandable. So so yeah, we'll just continue to answers for that, see what comes out of it. Any questions?
Just reading that report, Dan, or Hamish, I do remember at the infrastructure symposium, Nicole, what's her name, who's the boss of NZTA, did make the comment that emergency works was unlikely to be the same going forward, or certainly the funding of it was unlikely to be the same, which I took to be unlikely to be as much, really. And so wait and see with that, aren't we, I guess. But yeah, so Councillor Sharon.
Chair, just a quick question, Dan, is one of the challenges that, we have while everyone's working on emergency stuff, and everyone, as I've already said, is doing a fantastic job, but what's the thinking going into the future when this is all done? What's the strategy for Alliance to be able to get back to BAU? Because I'm sure you've brought in a whole lot of more teams and contractors and gear to be able to do what you're doing. Is the thinking, if we never had another Gabriel in the next whatever, what's the BAU strategy?
So that's mainly the purpose of having that supply panel set up with the contractors on that panel. So in regards to actual Terra Alliance staff, we haven't grown that much. So we've in regards to field teams, so that's the field teams have really just been focused on our BAU and delivering that maintenance and renewal programs, and that supply panel is what we've utilised to be able to deliver on the emergency works. Everyone on that panel is aware that it's forever changing. So at the moment we have 11 contractors that are on that panel. We've had over 20 applicants, including 11 that's on that panel. So we could reduce it, increase it, yeah, and likes. But yeah, I mean, our main focus is making sure that we are looking after local contractors, because things go quiet and they find work elsewhere, and then we get hit with an event and then we really rely on them. So yeah, that's continuing conversations that we have with them. We try and keep them up to date with these conversations we're having here as well.
So thanks, councillors. Thanks very much for that, Dan. Very well put together as usual. Councillor, we have a mover and a seconder for that report. Councillor Sharon, Councillor Irina, all in favour? Gary, thanks very much, Dan. So we'll move on to Don, I think it is, aren't we? Afternoon, Don. Good to see you again. The months go around quick, don't they?
Motion Friday. I take the report as read, just to add the solar renewable energy fund on 4. We've still got 2 other places that have put forward a proposal and yet to be fully gone through, and that is both Herbertville and Kumaroa. Pretty confident they will also be getting that money. Look, if just for your indulgence, can I just have a quick review of what's happened, because I think we all forget the amount of work that's gone through not only just through council but also through NGOs and iwi. First of all, I think we've got to thank both the CE, Mayor and Peter for the initial response. It has been noted in Jerry Mataparai's report as Tara had a response that was spot on at the time, early declaration, but also the readiness was already well done and the response was immediate. And it sounds simple to say, but other areas really struggle with that. So can I say well done to you, Mayor, and to the CE. Look, I think the other thing is that there are 2 of the 4 R's of, there's actually 5 R's of emergency management, but anyway, readiness and response has been planned very well by this council, which makes recovery a fairly, not a simple job, but a job that you walk into really easily because the groundwork's been done, and then it is quite easy to actually apply for funding and government response. I have to say that because of that, you got immediate help from then Minister Kieran McAnulty, and then latterly the new Minister Mark Mitchell. Everybody says Tara was forgotten. You weren't. They have very firmly had their eyes on what was happening here, and I think that Tara was an exemplar of how emergency management should run. The other part of this is that we had iwi also kicking in straight away along with other NGOs, but also, which is unusual, didn't happen in other areas, Rural Support Trust. They were on the ground immediately, in fact, part of the response right from day one, and had to be, because as we now know, many of our farm areas that were impacted were really badly impacted, and their impact will be seen for the next 3 to 5 years, I imagine. The other good point is that you brought in Sandra James early, who is an expert in both response and recovery. So she set up a recovery team. Certainly when I came into it, it was really simple just to keep on moving because it was well, they had done their research, and also they knew where the money was and could make the applications. And that is really, really important. I know money's not everything, but boy, for recovery it is. So look, it was, from my point of view, it was quite simple to come in and just keep things turning over. The other important thing is, and this will be occurring again, you did a survey that gave you a clear indication of where the problems were. And that was done quite early. That again can be given to government departments who immediately get in behind that because they see definite areas of where help was required. So we had MSD, DIA, MB and MPI. And with MPI, we were lucky we had on the ground here Lee Ransom, who was giving us heads up of what was going on, where she had concerns with rural support and how she could support both rural support and the council. And obviously we had that $1 million fund from MPI, and that was really quickly given out to farmers. The importance of that was it was not just the money, it was the psychological lift that was given to a lot of people who were desperate at the time. So I think from that point of view, the response went as well as I think as we could expect it to go. Just so you just know, I think we had something like $47 million that has been put out to the community, admittedly a lot of it's around roading, but a lot of it is also from DIA, for, MB, etc., for events and for running the recovery office as well. Within this paper, you'll notice that we're applying for a variation to the money that we've got from DPMC. It is only for the office, running the Office of Recovery. We are asking for that to be changed, as you can see, so that you can continue with actual recovery projects, and also looking a little bit into the future around what the cyclone has done to this economy. And my feeling is that you'll have an impact for the next three years at least.
The one thing I will say, and to me, has been a person who's always been interested in rural roading, the land stability case study is one that I think, if it gets off the ground, will be something that will be a real flag for all other rural councils to look at very closely. Because if we can get this so that it doesn't cost the ratepayer a cent, but yet do a lot of resilience work for our roading through working with the landowners and the roading team, to me, it's a huge win. And it's, to be honest, I find it really exciting because I think that will help a lot into the future around these sort of events. Other than that, sincere thanks to Mayor, to Brian C for your support, to our small team, which is now down to 2. They work pretty diligently, and also to the council for their support as well. So thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Don. I'm not sure all councillors are aware, but Don's finishing his role Friday of this week. So from this committee, Don, I just wanted to note Trudy Hales has finished and just acknowledge her work with you. But certainly, I think just formally like to note the huge efforts that you've put in during the period, and your skill and experience has made you've put a lot of praise on everyone else, but I think your role has been very vital and it's worked so well with us. So perhaps Mayor Tracy or Brian may like to make a few comments, or other councillors, but just to formally note in the minutes here, Don, a big thank you, and for something very well done. So,
and I think it's only as good as the team you've got in front of you.
Trace.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Don, I know that you retired as Mayor of the Ruapehu, and you were here as part of that, and it wasn't the retirement that you or Phyllis had planned. But I can't thank you enough for, taking up that challenge and coming in here, and to come from living in a district, being Mayor of that district, to coming in and being an absolute champion for the Tararoa district, for the rural people of this district, and for our economy and all other things in that recovery. You have been nothing but a champion at all times, and I know the team are very grateful. We're all very grateful here. You've set us up. Also, Sandra set it up at the start. You've continued that work on, and I think that with some of those future projects like the land stability, I guess for me, we're still battling to get, a greater than 93 cents, in the roading recovery, but we can see that recovery is long. But I thank you very, very much for everything that you've done. You've been a legend.
Thank you. Look, it's been an absolute joy. Is this the retirement? I'm all for it.
We could say we hope to see you again, but not in this role, Don. I think, but you've certainly championed the rural sector and everyone else in Tararua, and I think Tararua does stand high in the eyes of many who suffered and are still suffering really after the problem. So thanks from everyone around this table, Don.
Can I just say the reason we came back was the people. When we were farming here, it was the hardest time I can remember in our life for 6 years, but with the help of the community around us at Pongaroa and Turamea, that Phil was teaching, we had actually an enjoyable time, because all of us were suffering at that time anyway. And it was the people that drew us back, and we're glad we made that decision because it's been proven. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Don. So if someone would like to move and second Peter and Mike, all in favour? It's carried. So good retirement, Don. Well earned, I should say. Thanks for that. Right, councillors, we're motoring through this, so we're on to 7.6. Mike's turn at the helm. Good afternoon, Mike.
Hello, thank you, Chair.
Leave it in your hands for the time being.
Cool. Thank you again, Chair. First, councillors, ladies and gents. Capital portfolio report. A couple of pieces, I'll take it as read. Can you stick through some of the project sheets? Maybe a couple of points to highlight as well, the scale one as well, just interesting thing there. One thing I'd just like to cover off on is overall, the portfolio is looking good, especially with a bit of the reset that we've been able to conduct with some of the prioritisation that's gone into the LTP. So that's looking really promising. I'm looking forward to that. Another point to note is I'd like to start into the next financial year, being able to do some of the program reporting at a program level. So we really start managing all of those sort of little moving parts of projects and tying them together. So that'll be another work on as we carry on developing this sort of program or portfolio space with you all. So I'm looking forward to that. I do ask for a little bit of, I suppose, leniency for some of them as we go into it though. And I ask for that because at the moment we've gone from June to July, and then we're going into the next financial year. However, some of our reporting systems with our project software isn't liking the fact that we're still trying to carry on with the last year's sort of stuff as we go into the adoption of the LTP, but we'll have that all sorted out in the next bit. So that's the only part there. If we'd like to, I've any other questions on that, I'm happy to go over some of the project updates from Seven.
If we just pop through the report before we get the project sheets, anything we'll go through the pages. If we go 6.1, 6. Item 7, capital project updates. Everybody happy with those?
Big bit there on that Three Waters infrastructure enhancement project. That is what we're currently going with the redirection of the Better Off funding. So all of that money that we were talked about. So that's that 1.95. That's currently been submitted. It's all looking really positive from Crown Infrastructure Partners as to how that's looking. So I'm really happy with that. They're just pushing through with DIA, so we should get the confirmation that it's all been done. But yeah, it's been all.
Thanks, Mike. We'll move. Oh, sorry, yeah. Mike, Councillor Mike.
Through you, Chair, just while we're on that, so we're looking at that 1.95. What's our likelihood? We're trying to employ staff to implement some of these projects and we're struggling to find them. What's our likelihood of completing some of this or spending some of this money?
That's definitely a key risk. I mean, on one of the parts here is we can find and employ good staff that can actually fill those sort of roles. But I mean, there are contingency options that we can also look at. We can also go out to market for some of those pieces of work. So if there's anything else to add, Hamish.
Through you, Chair Kerry. So I think one of the key parts is that we're trying to recruit in-house first. We're going to give that an honest attempt before we look broader to our partners in the consulting world and that sort of thing first, which we do get less work for our money, if that makes sense. So we prefer to hire in-house and then build that capability in-house as well. So we'll try that first.
Thanks, Hamish. So if no other questions, shall we just we'll go through the sheets then, one, shall we? That's the sheet. Right, starting with Dannevirke Wastewater Treatment Plant. We'll move on to Dannevirke Water Supply Fluoridation Plant. Any comments here, Mike?
No questions.
Councillor Sharon.
Cheeky. Mike, those of us who have been attending the Mayor and Councillor sessions of late, and I'm fielding it from general ratepayers as well within Dannevirke. So the argument that I've put when the vast will is the fluoridation plant, going ahead. I've indicated that, we're coming to the end of having done a capital project rather than the next iteration. When the next iteration starts, will it won't become part of this report anymore, will it? It will become an operational. So effectively, this project should go off our books.
I would stop reporting on the completion of the construction of the plants, but then once the ambulance operations is occurred, it's probably.
Yeah.
Councillor, sorry, Mayor Tracy and Councillor Peter.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Mike, I was going to raise, and I guess given the high level of interest in this, just I have been thinking around the security of our water plants in general, and just wondered if there was anything, any budget or any thought had been given around that. And I know it's probably not part of your project, but actually it is a bit of a wider concern. And I guess where I'm coming from, we had a lot of visitors to the dam, you know, regardless when it was first leaking. So, and it concerned me then, but I just wondered, and I did briefly talk to Peter Wims, that I know that we do have cameras and bits up there, but I just wondered if there was any plans for some further security fencing or anything like that. Probably not in your brief, but talk to Brian.
Yes, there is in the long-term plan some considerations put around security systems, installations, as well as, fencing is another part there. They are being considered, but again, we have to look at the entire picture of the district, but it is something that is being considered and looked at, isn't particularly going into this year one of this LTP.
Thank you, Kerry. No, that was my question. The security, given the emotion in the air.
Mike, just a couple of questions from me. So we're at the civil electrical works completion date. So I guess the plant is sitting there being installed or going to be. We've got land acquisition that's orange flagged. So these are a couple of questions I had. I probably, being a little more blunt, I'm a lot more concerned about security than perhaps it's been. I'm being more blunt. I would be very concerned about security here. And I think, and just looking at what happened on Friday with just our computers going down, it would, it's probably not something you want to flag too publicly, but it would not take much to put Dannevirke's water supply seriously at risk, really, if the wrong thing happened. Just, I'm not sure quite where we are with this security issue, but it has been concerning me, and it could have doubled. It lit the fire a bit more than me on Friday when we end up being with a few hours water left, computer going down. Something else had happened, it would take a lot to stop water altogether. But so that's just a bit like me, Tracy and Peter. It is a big concern of mine, that security of that particular site. But land acquisition, have we bought any? We're not going to open that plant till we bought the land, bought some land. Second, maybe you can just.
So the land acquisition portion of this was just to try and enable us to make a turnaround area for the truck. That though we do have a contingency option already in place, which we can actually still enable that kind of operation into the future until that has actually been finalised. Just to address your concern around security, as soon as we start getting into discussions around securing of facilities and assets, it becomes a massive sort of conversation. There's different levels of different types of security that we can look into. When you're talking about before, we're talking about sort of IT related ones, and then you start talking about cyber security as well as physical security. There's so many different types of elements to this that it definitely can become like quite the rabbit hole, and all the way up to the point of, do we have to, people patrolling it, and how do we do all this kind of thing? Do we make Fort Knox? Do we not? So, and then that needs to be measured against cost and actual operational efficiency. So it is a huge beast when it comes into discussion of security, but it is definitely a lot of those sort of considerations will be considered and are being.
Great. Well, thanks to councillors and Mike. We'll move on to Northern Water Treatment Plant. Okay. Pick up the Tahuna Wastewater Treatment Plant. Pipeline Bridge.
On the Tahuna Wastewater Treatment Plant, we're currently having the working group with a couple of iwi's involvement as well as Horizons. It's in there in the current overall state. However, we just had a workshop run on the 15th of the 7th. That was really positive. All the outcomes so far are looking really good. Horizons are in the same area with us, so they're happy with where we're progressing with that, with the Tahuna Wastewater as a program, and likewise with Kaihetua Wastewater as a program of work. So it's all looking really positive here. We're on side. I would, at this stage, ask Dave if he'd like to say anything about the Tahuna Wastewater program.
And Chair Kerry, councillors, me Tracy.
So the wetland part is closed up for the winter for the last couple of months with all the planting done in the surface wetland, and the grass is growing on the places it should be growing, ever so slowly, but that's we've got the coverage and the erosion sediment plans fine. So we've got no issues with horizons on that. I'm reporting back to both when I do a weekly or a fortnightly check, depending on how much rain is in between. I'm reporting back to Horizons, our staff, and both iwi. So that's happening as we're going along. We've worked through with, so we've had some discussions on the pipeline, where the pipeline is going to go. So the design is getting done for the wastewater pipeline from the eventually the treatment plant. So we'll probably be putting pumping some water. We're just working through how to do it, either through a tank or a wet well, probably a tank really, from the oxidation pond over the wetland in the summertime once it dries up, because we'll need to keep those plants watered. And it's best to put wastewater over the wetland rather than clean water. If you don't feed the wastewater over it, it doesn't reject it, but it doesn't take it up as well as it does. So we'll get through the winter time, get through the spring growth, and then in the springtime. So we're looking at working through with the design for the plant, for the pipeline and the inlet and outlet flows of the wetland area to start as soon as we get the dry weather. The golf course won't be as bad. The ground is will dry out reasonable. It'll just be going down below. So we're just working with we'll work with the golf club and our designers and the contractor. So hopefully that'll be just in the spring, and we'll have that going before the summer sets in. And just, yeah, we're working through what options we've got for the plant. We're just talking about what we need to have to meet our resource consent. So that's just in the early stages, if you want to call it, before we come back to everybody.
Thanks very much, Dave. And Mike, any questions, councillors? Peter, Steve? Thanks.
Not so much a question, Kerry. Can you please make sure you replace your divots?
I haven't. I found about 10 golf balls. Do you want to cover it? Councillor Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kerry. Can I just go back to the Northwood water treatment plant upgrade? Congratulations on being 29% under budget. That's cool. But now it's obviously handover tomorrow, completion of works, I should say, between, it's got there on those dates, but then practical completion is a year away nearly, on the 25th of June. Is that right? Or the 25th of this. So, yeah, I'm just looking at those dates.
Yeah, I'll go back to it, but what I believe he's put in here for this is that we did make sure that what we made sure is that there was some contractual obligations to make sure that they're actually going to, we're going to report on it over the time and make sure that it actually is a fit for purpose solution, and that we then have something in the game as well to go back to them if it isn't working.
So you're basically saying you get a year's maintenance, and you're commissioning today, tomorrow, and Friday.
That me going into the dates right now, yes.
No, Northwood would be happy. Thank you.
Councillor, we'll just
Carry on, Rakaitai Bridge. Okay, no comments there. Wee bit of Wimbledon.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Just Rakaitai Bridge. I don't know where that bridge is, and I haven't seen it other than what's the photos that came out. But is that servicing? Is that on private land? It's servicing one farm only?
Chair Kerry, yes, I believe it's one property.
Is it a bridge we need to own?
So through Chair Kerry, so Waka Kotahi, as part of the recovery, 100% funding that project, we will end up owning the asset. And so when it needs to be maintained over the years, probably 15 years from now, we will start to pay the maintenance on that bridge once it needs its first coat of paint.
Further to that, I know there are one or two others, and I know Mike knows of one too, that service at one farm only, and that we need to seriously look at revoking the roading status of some of those little roads, particularly those with bridges on that we're having to maintain. I'd like to think we could look at that fairly quickly.
Through you, Chair Kerry. So the asset management team out at the Alliance are doing some of that work as we speak. They're working on sort of a level of service definition first, so we can sort of see where they're sitting and sort of understand the network, understand which roads are in that sort of state, I guess, and then what our obligations and opportunities are for the future as well, because unfortunately it's not as simple as walking away from some of these roads.
Any idea when we're likely to hear a report?
Unfortunately, we don't have any timeframes at this stage. There's been recent conversations that we're having, but I'd like to think we'd try and get that pretty well sorted through this financial year. It is quite a big task, so it's looking at basically what essentially assets are uneconomical, but overall we're just working on a hierarchy of the roads in general. So we use what's called a one network framework, ONF, which basically determines a hierarchy of all the roads on the network. But we're trying to develop, using the ONF, we're trying to develop a better hierarchy that's suited for this network. That's a bit more detailed, and as part of doing that is determining what roads we would consider uneconomic, what assets are uneconomic, that we could then consider what we do with those roads. But yeah, in regards to the question around Kaito, I mean, at this point, the bridge is a council asset. It was washed out as a council asset, so yeah, at this point, it is on us to do the repair to that bridge. But going forward, it is something that we're looking at as part of doing this road hierarchy.
Thanks, Dean. But I don't know how many other. I know there are plenty of roads in that category, but how many have got bridges on them that we're responsible for and could end up costing us a lot of money
Yeah, bridges are the main one that we definitely consider because of their high value assets. But it is all the assets in general that would be on those roads. Obviously, the road itself, but also large culverts and so on. So bridge is definitely the main one with the highest priority due to the value. But I think we need to do it as a network as a whole.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's all.
For you, Chair Kerry, but haven't we done this the wrong way round? We've just brought in a rating on roads and property owners through the long-term plan. And so a forestry company that owns land, and then we cut the road off if it's got access to one forest with a bridge, and then hand them the bridge, and then we're still charging them extra.
Through you, Chair Kerry. So as you can see, it's quite a complicated discussion to be having, and certainly those considerations would need to be factored into the decision making, and the work that the Alliance does and will bring back to you will include those parts as well.
Thanks, councillors. Yes, this particular farm, Peter, has a working farm that has a home on the farm, and there is another bare land block beside it. So Rakaitai Bridge is feeding two farms, but people live on one. And I think it's fair to say that this particular discussion has heightened some of our risks, and I think we need to look at it through this committee. But I mean, just to share, there's another issue that popped in that we've talked about here is depreciation on these assets. I mean, we're talking about a bridge that's going to be $1.5 million, or it could be, who knows, but depreciation initially is going to be substantial. And so thinking about this does bring these other roads, these bridges on. So I think this is certainly a discussion that will be had in a lot more detail around here going forward. But yeah, I shouldn't probably say, but I think had the political climate been different, a different result might have come. We might have been having a much harder conversation about this and some other bridges too. But Dan, sorry.
That's right. I'm sorry. I just would like to mention in regards to that funding, or the replacement of that bridge. I should have mentioned the recovery report, but that is through the 100% funding that we got for the initial response. So you just wanted to mention that in regards to the actual replacement.
Thanks, councillor Vinnie. Carry on then. The Office Institute infiltration strategy.
That's the work that's going on. IAF project. To a wastewater treatment plant.
Waste.
Any other? That's it. Anything like any comments? Mike, sorry.
Yeah, Kerry, we met at Pacho the other day as well, with the stakeholders, with iwi, Horizons, our staff, and Envirodin and Combe. We talked about the position of we went through the operation of how the pond operates and how the existing plant is, etc. So they got a good understanding of how it works at present with the clarifier and the DAF plant. So, and we discussed repositioning the new plant when we do decide on it down at the far end of the number 3 pond, right adjacent to the actual where the wetland's going to go in, and that would actually give us some benefit in costings from pipe, because we have to actually pump from number 3 pond back up to the plant at present, and then we'll have to put a pipeline all the way back down to the wetland, and you would actually end up having to pump twice. So it was a good discussion on elevating the plant at the bottom of the and we did have Roger McGibbon there from who designed the wetland to make sure that we were on board with the area we've got and where we could position it, etc. So it was a very good discussion on that part, to be fair, on with everybody buying into not buying into it, but agreeing that the position of the plant to save this cost and that cost was actually quite vital. So yeah, so watch this space when we come a bit closer to it, but it was a very good discussion that day.
Thanks, Dave. Councillor Peter.
Thanks, Kerry. Yeah, Dave, you're talking about putting a building down by the wetland. Will it be raised in case of flooding and so on?
Yeah. So, Chair Kerry again.
The pond heights here and actually the wetlands down here. So the plant would actually come up here. So we would pump once into the plant, then gravity feed from the plant to the wetland because it's just beside it. So that's part of the reasoning of trying to cut those extra costs long term as we're going along. So going through those scenarios early on rather than later on. Got to move a fair bit of dirt and material from down there, so we actually won't be bringing it in. It'll be from the site with a bit of luck.
Me on top of that as well. I mean, as you can appreciate, a lot of moving parts and a lot of interrelated areas within our program. So in particular in this one as well, we've got inflow and infiltration as well as something that also needs to be considered in this project. That's why it is a key part for us to establish this working groups that we have going at this operational sort of level, so we can make sure that we are have as a key part all our key stakeholders in the room at the same time to make sure that we're going through these sort of workshopped ideas and making sure that everything ties in together. And those this was actually a key lesson that was learned from our Water NZ conference that we went to last year. And those ones have been able to essentially buy into that same sort of methodology here. And we've tailored that for an approach here within Tararua. So that's where this is all sort of leading, which is going really positive for us.
So let's do Skater. Councillor Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Cherry. Yeah, this here I see it's finished, phase 1, finished last month. So are we dealing with phase 2 with urgency? Obviously, because if you read the brief there, the proposed what it's done or going to do, hopefully will negate problems going forward. So have we got a time frame roughly on that, when that kicks off and finishes?
So the phase 2 for implementation is affected into the LTP. There's a couple of lines in there for Skater, both water, wastewater. So that's over the next 6-7 years that we've gotten in for. That was the initial estimation. That's what we looked into from the initial review of what we were looking at with phase 1 here. With all of that put into place, we're currently better postured to actually have that evaluated, and that's what's just been done. And that there will go into a prioritisation. A couple of those computer systems were identified as well that need to be part of that. The risk prioritisation of it ends up being like which ones are critical, which ones are for compliance, and there's been a multitude of other factors that have gone into it. So it definitely is something that has to be done with urgency, and it is something that we want to do all the ones that we need to do first. So we don't have all the money in the world. It's going to be a large amount of money poured into this project or program, should I say, over time. But it's not a simple solution when we start getting into some of these ones. What I'd like to mention as well is that contingencies and alternate sort of ways of communication, as well as database storages, have all been considered as part of this. So that's where we're going with that. So every single one of these plants will have some sort of forms of contingency backups and alternate routes of communication.
Councillor Mike.
You Chair, just while we're on that, just the budget, approved budget for that project, 493, and so far actuals 127. What's it likely to be at their completion, please?
I would have to get back to you for the actual completion of this phase 1. There's still a couple of ones to come through.
We're not envisaging spending the entire of that. As well as done as a compilation of the budget line there of the projects that are related to telemetry and Skater, so that we can consolidate our efforts within the Skater and telemetry area. At the time, I was sort of, we're going a bit everywhere. That's why we consolidated the whole thing to make sure we had a district-wide overview, which we now have.
So I can get back to you as to what I'll get back to you as the closeout of this phase 1. Going into the next ones for phase 2 will come in the end of financial report as well, and they'll start being reported on for telemetry Skater phase 2.
Thanks, Mike, for that. Woodville Headworks, B2. So thanks very much for that.
Great report, Michael. I think we've come a long way in this past 12 months with the PMO and the reporting, and I think we're all pretty thankful for the direction where we're going and where we've arrived at, actually. So thanks for that, Peter. Before we
just that IAF project, presumably it hasn't been subdivided yet. The property hasn't been subdivided, and there will be development contributions on subdivision that will go to defray our costs in that.
Blunt, I'm not currently in a position to answer that question. I've just been working on through with Eugene as to the implementation of what we have here for the pump station and commissioning. So we can get back to you on an answer for that.
Council, if we could have a recommendation there
Michael support, second mover, councillor Peter, second Nona. All in favour? Against? Carry. Thanks, Michael. Councillors, this the agenda without a bit of an update on the infrastructure.
Symposium, which we promised to do. So what we'll do, Mayor Tracy's going to give us a bit of a lead in and then followed by Steve and myself. So
Too long, councillors? It's been a little while since we've been there.
Your notes are very comprehensive, councillor.
I did leave mine behind, but I can't.
Chair Kerry, I've picked a couple of speakers that I found particularly interesting, and the slides have been circulated. There was some fantastic stuff around future populations and what infrastructure we should be building. But a couple of highlights for me. Bill English spoke about the challenge of trying to regulate risk and the 15% compounding rate increases. And his views were that we're over-regulated because of risk elimination and we require risk-adjusted thinking about cost. And I guess traffic management highlights some of this, along with the challenges that we're facing with the Dannevirke compounded supply. A key takeaway was recognising reports. I think I talked about word fog, where there was the intent, but the sense of urgency was not clear. And he said, in these reports, focus on words that compel action. Central government need a 30-year infrastructure strategy and how to finance it. When dealing with central government, find the decider and don't waste time with people who can't actually decide and don't accept that word fog either. So he was straight, he was very good. Focus in meetings, focus which problem and where is this meeting going to solve, and ask it every time. Be very clear on what you have to do, and if you want to be influential, have a positive proposition. He made a key point about paying for skill and needing those key skills. He said no amount of planning can make up for incompetence. Housing is the single biggest issue facing the country. He said for local government, pick one, the power of one, pick one issue collectively, rewrite the code, manage the risks and costs halve as much. And he said, and I did like this, let data tell the story. They want to see some of that evidence. We're a small country with a small number of ratepayers and taxpayers to pay for it. How we pay for it is just as big a problem. There's a finite fund that needs to be distributed, and that the land transport plan needs to be the right size. The different models, the Infrastructure Finance and Funding Act, the Act is a premise on has a premise of the beneficiary pays and is well structured for private monies to enter the local government. Funders will put money in, but it will back the projects that have the revenue to pay for it. Private capital interest is a little higher than Crown Infrastructure Partners would like, and that is because it's risk-based. Public-private partnerships are not going to fix our funding problem. They take 18 months to get in place, and if a big projects, is there a partnership approach that works better within the community? Waka Kotahi, longer term plan horizons and cycles. We need long-term certainty. The pricing of the system so that it can appropriately fund. Crown Infrastructure Partners, the cost of the IFF is not supposed to be a tool like the LGFA. It provides a 30-year certainty of debt that is off the balance sheet to provide a tool that progresses economically funded projects. And then there's some really good stuff on the future is different in the past, the demographics, climate change and technology. With slower population growth in the past, migration, global transition and birth rates dropping, we need to attract a workforce so that immigration might change in years to come. The UN report, the world population will start dropping in 2080. What does that mean for our infrastructure? The three responses: asset management and investment plans. How do you understand what we have and what we might need in the future? The infrastructure strategy, good infrastructure pricing practices. How do we raise money to pay for investment and use that information to plan and prioritise? And then transparency, disclosure and review. How do we maintain public support and buy-in for planning and pricing? So I really encourage everyone to have a look at those slides and some of the thinking. They did have some really good examples of future infrastructure projects and how we look at them differently. They had some big ones from overseas around pipes and systems that actually had walkways and things integrated. But for us here in the Tauranga district, when I think about our problems, that was just a little bit too far. It was a great vision, but I couldn't see it in some of our challenges that we've got currently. So those were a couple of the highlight speakers for me. I know Steve's were different.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I sent you that email, so it's at your own leisure. Have a look at it. I think it's quite inspiring if you look at the Taranaki one. I was impressed with him because we can always say that, let's face it, our world has changed yesterday or 2 days ago. What we're going into in the next 6 years, we'll never see, and we don't understand what's going to happen, but it's not going to be good. It's going to be different. It's going to be challenging. So from this level of governance, we are going into a different area. But I must say, from a positive part, Taranaki Foundation, I mean, they're inspiring. I tell you what, I could have sat there and watched it. There's nothing wrong about being rich. They didn't knock anybody about being rich. They didn't knock anybody about being poor. They were being private partnerships, work. It's about a collective thing going forward. So I won't say too much, but it's all in there. If you just go around that Taranaki Foundation page, and there's in that email, there's a whole lot of little movies, and they are inspiring, and they can show what people can do. And okay, admittedly, we haven't got the sea beside us, but we have got a few things in our toolbox. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. If you get a chance to go to one, take it up. And as Mayor Tracy said, Bill English, he's an actor himself. Very good. That's why he was probably the last speaker on, and he spoke very well. And yeah, don't talk in the fog. If you know something, say it, because then the media won't get out and say it and then ask you, why didn't you say it? That was his plain rule. Very simple. Keep it honest, integrity, and keep really in it for the people. You're there to serve, and which I think every one of us in this room are very proud to do so. But as I said, going forward, we are now in a different phase of our country.
Thanks, Steve and Mayor Tracy. I apologise, I did leave my notes behind somewhere. But to follow that, prior to the symposium the night before, they had Chris Bishop at a wine and dine, and he spoke in quite detail about infrastructure and where New Zealand was going, and his speech is on the Treasury website for those who like listening to those things. So if you go to Treasury website, 14th of June, you'll be in there. So that just, if you want to really listen to exactly what he said. But just to follow on from a couple of notes from Mayor Tracy, one of the things that did come out was everyone's talking longer term plans. We need to focus on the up to 30 years plus. Kira McAnulty, about 3 or 4 of the speeches, including Bill English, were on that track. What changed my views a bit, I've been pushing the infrastructure investment fund a bit, but Kira McAnulty said, of course, what is good for one council won't be good for another when it comes to funding. But they had the chief accountant from Tauranga City there, gave us quite a detailed view of using the infrastructure investment fund. And the main reason they did it because their headroom disappeared completely. So they decided to take 300 or 400 million for their main project of their roading project, and half of that was borrowed into that fund. But in a way, he talked himself out of being. He talked me out of it anyway, I'll be honest. But he said it was a long process. It was very critical. It was detailed. It was hard labour. Needed some serious investment experts on site and in your own council. And he felt that the Act covering that needed some significant changes to be beneficial to council. So he is in the slides, but changed my view about pushing that arrow a little bit. The lady Beasley from the Wellington City Council had quite a session on a new infrastructure software program they've developed, and was selling it in a nice way to other councils. I don't know whether Tauranga districts looked at that at all, but it sounded pretty good, and she was trying to recommend it from a nationwide thing. It would be quite good. The one slides, there was the one session that wasn't put on tape. It was Lindy Scott, who was the chief executive of the LG Local Government Australia. Actually, that was the lady who spoke a lot about infrastructure. She represented 537 local groups. She talked about basically her thing. It was not dissimilar. She said the local government system in Australia isn't sustainable as it's struggling. It is. Really, Australian LG systems are struggling to maintain infrastructure remote and regional areas, really difficult. In fact, she went on to say that any water utilities, 3 waters outside the major metropolitan areas are really high risk, really have got some huge problems over there. Went on to talk about libraries, interesting enough, which has been talked around here, and she talked about some great ideas happening in Queensland, but mainly Victoria, where the libraries, and she mentioned a couple of fantastic spots. She said they've formed hubs, community hubs for all sorts of things, and the libraries have become centres of activity in towns. And so that's something we've talked about at a lower level here, but over there she was very passionate about that, and very passionate about the other subject that's concerned us even at our little low levels about, let's say, social disruption within council work over there. And different councils, and particularly in Queensland, they're now doing council meetings by Zoom, refusing public access. They have closed meetings that they have to the public, and they have had, in some cases, police attending meetings as a norm. So a disturbing trend, really, but it's showing up there. That was her regional libraries. Bill English, yes, Bill English finished the day, and he had 5 things that he mentioned. Risk was one interesting one, really, and he said New Zealand can't afford to carry the risk and pay for it, and we've got to decide. And we've talked that here with Phil, and he's going through some risk meetings with us, and so Bill English was just, New Zealand can't afford risk, and he said ratepayers just can't afford 15% year-on-year increases, and will probably not pay for it themselves. He mentioned, Tracy said skill. He was really about that as well. You've got to pay for some skill. Very big on your relationships with central government. One thing that's come out interesting with Kieran McNulty, with Shane Jones at that meeting, and a previous one where Tracy and I went to, and also I think just recently, Bill English mentioned when he was a minister, that he says continuous complaints from the public or councils probably won't really cut the mustard, but if you turn up with positive, practical propositions, and St. Jones mentions this all the time, he said you're likely to make some ground, and which tweaked me. But the other thing which has been an issue that I've thought about, and me, Tracy and I have talked about, is comms and about the management of infrastructure projects. So he said you need to communicate with your communities really well. If things aren't going right, be the first to tell people. Tell the people before the press. Just don't hide anything. Just let them know and take them on that journey. And he said he learned that when he was a minister. He's learning that now too, and the other projects he's doing. So to me, some things that we would apply here at this level came out quite strong. What I did like too with Bill English, he said during his years in Parliament, and also in recent times where he's on a number of things, and he talked about efficiency. He said we need to get efficient to save money. He said, and he applies that to when he was in Parliament. Now he said, for your meetings, he said, just look at all your meetings you have, and he said what I like this. He said, what problem where is this meeting going to solve? If it isn't going to do that, he said, don't have it, or think about why you're having it. And I like to cut to the chase for me. Get clear about what you're doing and what you're good at, and do it. You know, that was me. I think there was a lot of good things in that meeting, actually, that all the three of us took out, and hopefully we can pass on to here. That's probably it from us. So, any questions from council about that? Councillor Scott, and then Councillor Ali. Oh, sorry, Ali. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's putting me in the right direction there.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks very much, team, for sharing those insights. Probably through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Tracy, asking a little bit more about the English part. I watched that online, and I agree it was very direct, and it was very clear, and it gave some quite tangible advice, I think, to the sector and to council. So through you, if I may, to Mayor Tracy, just wondering if there's been since then any discussions at mayor level or within LGNZ about how to take some of those, you know, quite sage suggestions, him knowing this new government quite well, and putting them into practice. Because, you know, some of them, they sound great, but nothing will happen if we don't get LGNZ behind finding those problems, actually trying to come up with some solutions. I'm just wondering if any discussions have happened yet, or if you're aware of any that are to come.
I think as we head to the conference, that's where we'll hear some of that, and they've got a huge focus again on localism. So I'm looking forward to hearing that, especially around the roading with Mayor Neil Holdham and Mayor Andy Watson, working directly with Waka Kotahi and taking things directly to the board and being a little bit more active in that space. So I've seen some positive things coming out of there, and just that different thinking. But I think it'll be good to get together at conference and have that planned out a little bit better. Yeah. And especially with the infrastructure fund, the regional infrastructure fund is having just been announced.
Thanks for that, Scott. Just reminded me of something, Scott, actually, if you just take another quick minute. I do recall that Nicole Rosie, the boss of NZTA, did make a comment towards the end of her speech, and Hamish may recall, and said, if I give you any advice, she said, make sure you create good relations with the NZTA, the team, and make sure you attend all the roading meetings and the opportunities, because that's your input into the system. And without your voice and without your localism about your roads, you may get missed. So she encouraged that level. So I remember that quite clearly now. I'm sure Hamish did it, Tracy. But just reminded me. Thanks, Scott. So that's our meeting. Just before we close it, councillors, just we have that drive over next Thursday of the district. So before we go, if perhaps you just mentioned to Mayor Tracy who is going to go and who isn't, I'll just a reminder really, but before you go today. But on that note, we'll close the infrastructure meeting. Thank